Good morning. This is George Hepworth, Rover Park Consulting. Let's build Mike's mobile library. In today's session, we'll continue our development of the publication screen by using the SetVar command and the OnSelect action, along with the patch command to edit existing records. Let's get started. As before, I have opened my PowerApps development environment in my Office 365 account and navigated to the publications screen in my development copy of Mike's mobile library. Before I actually dive into the edit function for updating fields in an existing record, I want to revisit something that I promised in my previous video and didn't quite get around to implementing. One of the things that I had to do in order to use the patch command successfully was implement this data type. This is an OData type for connectors that work with the lookup fields in SharePoint lists. I set a variable var OData to the value of this actual reference so that instead of having to use this entire string, I can simply refer to the variable and implement it that way. I intended to dive into that more deeply, but I did not have the time to do the research. I felt like I needed to offer a reasonable explanation. I can tell you that it does work, but without a little more time to invest in research, I'm not comfortable trying to explain it. So I will defer that to a later video and come back now and work on our edit option for updating records in a table, in a SharePoint list, using patch command. Let's start the app by playing it, and I'm going to apply filter. This is a contains filter. I could just find it also by doing black. Notice we don't have an image yet, and the publisher is still the incorrect publisher. So in order to correct the publisher, we're going to use the edit option. What the edit option does, it sets a variable, and I'll show you the code in a minute. It sets a variable to this particular record in the table, sets the form on this screen into the edit mode, and then navigates us to this screen. So now we're looking at the red and the black, or the record for the red and the black, in an edit screen with, and as you can tell, it's editable by the fact that the fields are highlighted with a border. The field that we want to correct is this one, the publisher. Now, I went ahead, because I don't have set up yet a way to add new publishers in my development version. I did this behind the scenes. I went directly into the list and added it. But there's the modern library that we want to use to update this record. We select it, and now we're ready to save it. When I hit the save button, it will implement the same code we looked at in the previous session. This time, however, instead of adding a new record, we're going to update or modify the current record, the one we're looking at in this edit screen. The code is very similar, except for that one difference, and we handle that with the conditional. I'll go ahead and add this, or excuse me, save it. It updates, brings us back to the publications gallery. The publisher has now been updated, and we're ready to look at the code behind all of this. We still don't have the image, but we'll get that in a later session. So I'm going to step out of the play mode, select the icon for the edit, and look at the OnSelect action. Let's just walk through this very carefully. The first thing we do is we set a variable called var publication to the value of the currently selected item in our publications gallery. To review, the gallery is the object on the screen where we're displaying a list of all the records in the publications table. The selected item is the one which has been highlighted here. We have it filtered, so it's the only one visible. But it is the one which has, well, to use an Access term, it has the focus. It is the current record or the selected record. When we hit our Edit button, it sets the value of this publication to the value of that record that's selected. Now, keep in mind that this is a record, not a primary key field or a foreign key field. This is the entire record that we have selected. Now we're going to check to see if we need to do something with the cover photo. Because I don't yet have all the image, the cover photo image processing set up, I'm going to skip over this. This section would basically set a variable to the name of the image that we have currently selected for that particular book. And since we don't have one, it would set that to the default, which is icon image that I use. We'll skip over that for now and come back. Now, we're going to do some other variable setting here. We're going to set the condition, var condition variable, to the value of this current publication, and this is the one that we just selected, to its media condition ID. The genre to the genre ID associated with this publication. Again, just to reiterate, the var publication refers to the entire record, so we can use the dot convention to refer to a particular element or property of that publication. Its media condition ID, its genre ID, its publisher ID. We're going to change the publication form on the following screen to the edit mode, and then we're going to navigate to that screen where that edit form exists. That's what we did in the demo. We'll run it again, go over, and we're looking at the red and the black record. We've updated the modern library publisher, and so that's going to carry forward. Now let's look at the save for this particular record. We'll select that icon, look at its OnSelect event. Here is the code that runs in the OnSelect action of the save icon or the save button in our edit publication screen. This is exactly the same code that ran in the process of adding a new record, except that in this case, the conditional logic will take us into this branch as opposed to the other branch. That's because we first check to see if there is a value in this variable. And as you can see, because we came from the edit button, which did set the variable value to the publication, we have a record. It includes controls from the item, the labels and so on, but it also includes fields from the underlying record. The number of volumes, the title, edition, printing, and so on. One thing that I did want to take note of in passing, if I can find it again, year published. This is another case where I originally misspelled the name of that field and I left off the ED. I went back and aliased that field to the way I wanted it, but PowerApps still remembers that original misspelled name, and in the publication it shows up here. This save code works either way. If I drop the if I drop the D off here, it still works because it's going to reflect the actual underlying internal name. With the D, it also recognizes it as the alias, and that works as well. Something that you will get used to as you work with PowerApps is this ability to dig deep into the internals for values. Okay, back to the process at hand. How do we know which record is going to get updated? We're going to patch, which is the command that changes a record or adds a record in the underlying table. Which record are we going to pick? We're going to pick the one which has the same ID as the ID in our current record in the variable. So if I highlight var publication ID, I see that that is record 55. So it will go to publications table, find record 55, and update it. The way we get there, the syntax that gets us to that point, is first we filter the publication so that there's only those records which match that value in our internal record set. In order to make it actually work, I found that I had to say I may have more than one record in my filter, therefore I'm going to take the first one. That is technically redundant, but I found that in order to reliably select just that one record, I had to include the first. So it is show me the first record where the ID matches the record ID of the variable. Now we've isolated that one record, and we can proceed to update it. As I showed you just a second ago, this will update whether I spell it here the way it is correct or as the original internal misspelled name. We take the values, again, from each of the controls, the title, number of volumes, catalog number, year published, and so on. We edit or update the existing values in these fields with those that are currently set in that form. Another note in passing, you could attempt to identify which controls got changed or which values got changed and which didn't, and selectively update only those that got changed. I don't see any value to doing that because the code that would allow you to isolate those changed fields would be pretty complicated. And it is easier to just go ahead and say, well, if this doesn't change, updating it to itself isn't going to impact the results. So it's just more efficient, I think, to go ahead and update them all. We saw the media ID, and that is the OData, and I will promise that I will get back and talk about that more. Cover photo link. This is a variable which points to the Azure Blob Storage location for our images. And it appends to that or concatenates to that the value of the publication photo link field on our form. We take the text and I use the trim to ensure that I'm not getting any extraneous leading or trailing spaces or blanks. Once it is patched, this is the other option in the conditional that doesn't get executed, so we skip over that. We refresh our records internally with those from the publication, which now includes the changes that we just saved. And we regenerate the collection, the publications collection, from those existing records so that the internal collection syncs up with the external table. And that's all we're doing there. So I think that's enough to kind of get us on our way to the next part. Let's look at this again, see if I've missed anything. Each of these fields which are exposed as drop-downs are of those lookup type fields, and they're the ones that we have to deal with in more detail in a future video. Okay, so in a future video we'll come back and take that long promised look at lookup fields and the structure we have to use to update them with the patch command. We'll also look at the default values and the way those are set for the controls on this form, in particular those which you use the drop down with lookup lists. As always, I hope you are getting something useful out of these videos. If you are, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you'll be informed of future videos. And if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, I'd appreciate seeing those in the comments. Talk to you later.